And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome. It's time for another exciting episode of IT Career in Australia live stream. And tonight's topic is how to integrate values into your tech recruitment process. Thank you so much for finding some time to join me this evening. Please don't forget to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversation with your questions and comments. Or at least say hi in the comments so we know that you're here and you're actually listening to us. So I'm Jana Martins. I'm currently working in IT consultancy, so responsible for leading people function there. I'm passionate about learning more about the present and future of tech industry. And I'm always eager to share my latest findings with you on this YouTube channel. So tonight we're going to talk about how to integrate values into your tech recruitment process. And Simon is going to share his insights and his experience. We'll be discussing things you should always be assessing on the interview, the difference between different types of interview questions, and how to focus on what you want to discover in the interview process. So if you someone who have hiring coming up and want to get prepared, this is a great video for you. And if you're a job seeker, it will be great for you to understand the interview process from other side. So please tag and share this video with your colleagues and friends who need to hear this. And before I pass it over to Simon to introduce himself, I just want to remind you quickly that we're streaming live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you miss the stream, no worries. You can watch the replay by subscribing to my YouTube channel, IT Career in Australia. I go live there every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time with experts from my network. And we're talking about all the things around IT career, job search, and in and outs of tech industry in Australia. And if you want to make sure you never miss the next show, join my meetup group to receive the invites. And I always encourage you to use this live stream as your opportunity, not only to learn new information, but to network with people in the industry. So please don't be shy, ask as many questions as you like, but stay on the topic. And remember that the most active participants will receive a good surprise at the end of the stream. So that's, a lot of talking from me. Few people saying hi. James is here. Great to see you, James. James here almost every week. Love the commitment. Douglas here. Thank you, Douglas, for joining us tonight. Please, guys, say hi if you haven't, because it's always nice to see that you're here. So anyway, Simon, please, over to you.
That was a bit of an intro. It's almost like you do this every week, like you're so well rehearsed and well practiced. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. My name's Simon. I own a company called Crew Talent Advisory. We are a Melbourne-based talent consultancy for technology companies. So we work on site with technology companies, do their hiring for them, advise them around talent strategy, provide some talent market intelligence, work with them on talent infrastructure if they need that building out, but basically helping them grow the headcount to achieve the things that they need to achieve. We've worked with everything from pre-seed scale-ups through to established businesses as well. So pretty much any size, any hiring challenge, hiring project is what we do. Our main space is sort of B2B SaaS has sort of been the main area we focus on. So really understanding how cross-functional teams work. Main job families we generally get called in to hire sort of around product design and engineering. We'll do some of the periphery product marketing type work and go-to-market sales, CS, those sorts of roles as well. So anything in that sort of SaaS landscape, if you want to call it that.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. We have Freya also joining us. Thank you for saying hi. Thank you. And okay, so let's dig deep into it straight away. Basically, the first question is a general question, like why are we talking about it today? Why are you passionate about this topic, and why do we even need those values in the tech recruitment? So
look, I think there's a couple of things. So to answer your first question, why are we passionate about it? Look, we're Melbourne based. We're passionate about seeing Australian businesses compete well and succeed. The values piece, businesses can spend a lot of time and effort and money on hiring the wrong people, and that doesn't have to be the case. Hiring for skills and competencies is probably the easier part out of interviewing. And whenever you're trying to hire someone, there's three things that you're looking for: skills, values, and competencies. The skills and competencies you can kind of get to. The values bit can be a bit more challenging. And I think we've all been in the situation where we've interviewed someone who seems great at interview. They're really engaging, effervescent, if you want to call it that. And they seem like a great potential fit. We've hired them, and then a couple of months into it, it's just not worked out, and sometimes we're not sure why. So there are ways and means of that not happening, because when it does happen, if I think the smaller team you're in, the bigger impact it has. The smaller your business, if you're really early stage, a mishire can really impact your team. And obviously, maybe the bigger your company is, maybe you can get away with it a little bit more, but I certainly think sort of more early stage, you probably can't.
Yeah. But anyway, we always talk about the cost for hiring the new person is one of the biggest expenses for most of the companies anyway, regardless of the size. Okay, let's just, I guess, dig into it. So we want to hire someone. We want to include those different questions in our interview process. But how actually we can make sure that we interviewing correctly and can get ready for the interview correctly.
Yeah. So these slides, these are part of the interview training that we deliver for clients, and this slide deck people can have at the end. But I think becoming great at interviewing, I think it starts off with sort of understanding, what you're looking for. So what's the purpose? Why are you interviewing? Do you understand the purpose of the role? What are the requirements? Some of the structure around interviewing important as well. So running structured interviews that are pre-planned rather than what we see a lot of people do, just winging it, making it up as they go. The content of your interview, really important. What questions are you going to ask? What signals are you looking for? Feedback is another important part. When your hiring team comes together post an interview process, are you sharing information and making good quality decisions together about whether you're going to hire somebody or not? And then being able to manage your bias, so being aware of and actively going after mitigating the biases that we all have. So I think these are sort of the key parts, if you like, of becoming great at interviewing. And I think it's like everything, right? You want to be a good interviewer, just interview people more and have a plan. Yeah? You want to be a better runner, just run more. So interviewing consistently, thinking it through, and being really clear what you're looking for. I think that's probably the one thing that we see the most is people not really being clear as a hiring group about the things that they're looking for, the skills, the competencies, and the values.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes we make the rush decisions basically just because we were looking for the wrong person in the first place, because we didn't spend enough time to think who we're actually looking for. But coming back to that, like, structure, do we actually need a structure? Why do we need a structure of the interview process?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So structure is the way that you're interviewing, the questions that you're asking. You can't compare people proactively and sensibly if you're not interviewing them the same. That's one thing. If you don't understand the skills and competencies that you're looking for, and then you're not purposely targeting your conversations towards that, looking for the signals, then you're just making it up as you go. And when you make up interviewing as you go, you might as well just do that and just pick anyone, because if you don't have any structure and reason behind why you're interviewing people the way you are, or making the decisions you're making, just offer anyone. Like, it seriously doesn't matter, because there's no rhyme or reason to the decisions you're making.
Yeah. And I think, we have like some typical interview stages that usually the, companies go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So generally a phone screen, generally a recruiter will do this. If early stage business, if they're not using a recruiter, a hiring manager or a founder would, do this. But this is generally focused on, is there potential in this candidate? A lot of people we see are trying to get all the information they want out of the first discussion. So what you're trying to ascertain is there potential in discussing this candidate? But also, do they qualify for the role? Do they have working rights? If you're not sponsoring and you need this person to have work rights, do they have work rights? Do their salary expectations meet yours? If you need them to be located in a certain area, is that working? What sort of notice period do they have? So there's some big stuff that you need to probably cover off before you spend a couple of hours in having discussions with them. Because if those things don't work, then it's pointless having discussions.
I think it's important to mention because as you mentioned, sometimes if you suddenly decide you need to hire someone and start winging the process and simply just didn't ask those questions at the beginning.
Yeah.
You didn't ask those questions about rights to work or notice period or something. You can really get yourself a surprise at the end of the interview. You're like, you happy, you want to make an offer, and then suddenly the person telling you like, oh, I have like 2 months notice, I want to finish my project at the previous place or something in this line.
Yeah, I've lost track of the amount of times I've seen people get to the end of the process and they offer a candidate a role and they go, oh no, I thought it was a contract role. I charge $1,000 a day. I don't want a salary. I'm on a contractor. You spent all that time getting excited about people, roping people in your team into interviews, and you can't even hire the person. So again, just getting clarity over that stuff up front. First discussion. Second interview is generally that sort of deep dive, usually the hiring manager +1. Probably advise a team member. Deep dive into the suitability of the role, assessing these specific skills. What are the motivation? Is there some alignment to values? And then some further explanation into like the culture and the opportunity and that sort of thing. And then second interview is usually sort of more focused on how they work and their technical abilities and how they solve problems. And again, checking for alignment between values, their core strengths and how they work, and the requirements of the role. So everything's got to be focused on the suitability of the role. Every signal you're looking for, every conversation that you're having has to tie into the requirements of the role. Otherwise, you're just having a nice chat with someone.
And where do we start? So I don't know. We decide to hire someone. We want a structured interview. We want to make sure that someone not just tick the box about technical skills. We want to make sure they're great, great cultural fit and have same values. So where do we start with the structuring this process?
Yeah, so getting your hiring team together is a great first start. So everyone who's involved in interviewing should be involved in your process for this one. Hiring manager, so the person this new hire is reporting to directly, probably a team member. Again, if you're in a cross-functional team, if you're hiring an engineer, maybe your product manager for that team, or your designer from that team as well, because they're going to be having cross-functional. And we're going to be doing that a lot in this discussion, by the way. That's international symbol for cross-functional. If this person's going to be interacting with other people in a team, have them involved as well. So get everyone together who's going to be involved in the hiring process. Get everybody aligned on what are the skills needed in this role. Make sure everyone's really clear, and then everyone being clear about what their part of the interview process is. So if someone's second interview and they're digging deep into the technical alignment and the day-to-day parts of the role and this candidate suitability, they need to be really clear about that. So document this, use a template. You can get one at the end of this session. We've got templates. We'll give you one. But just starting off with something documented. You don't build software without having some kind of sprint plan or some kind of idea of what you're building. You just don't go off randomly coding. Maybe you do, but you shouldn't. So same should be with hiring, right? So have a plan, know what you're looking for, know what the requirements of the role are, and then make a start.
I think you have some some example about separating signals from the noise.
Yeah. So when you think like what is interviewing, it's a data gathering process or an interview process, but it's about data gathering. It's about trying to gather the right signals or the information from a candidate. So the interviewer's role is is about contributing to this pool of knowledge. And I think that's a really good way to think about interview process, is gathering a pool of knowledge that allows you jointly to make an informed decision about whether this person is right for your business. So as a interviewer, you should be taking notes. You should be taking time after your interview to think through the discussion. What were the positive things? What things stood out for you that were really relevant to the role? What things do you probably want to dig into another interview or come back to, or that need following up? So you're contributing to a pool of knowledge that you're gathering about that candidate. Super important. And again, focusing on the signal. So again, everything you're asking should be actionable on generating signal of, does this person have the right skills, competencies, and values alignment to be a fit for us? So
I guess, the biggest struggle for a lot of people is that usually, in the current market, candidates don't want to go through long interview process, and have like 5 rounds of interviews where they can go through all the things. But on the other side, like, you're mentioning about looking for all this information during the interview process. We want to get the idea of, like, find those signals, find these technical skills, find this thing. Like, but how we can make sure we can do it just for, like, meeting this person twice and assess all of that?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? So there's a couple of things there. So I think interview process, you're right, like candidates don't want to be in a 5 interview process. So I think first discussion, be really clear what your interview process is. If you have 5 interviews, there might be a reason for that. Okay, like there could be. I mean, the more senior roles, generally, you'll have some more interviews. I'd probably advise against having 5. That being said, there's plenty of people out there in the market that are unfortunately being laid off. So some people need a job, and they'll do what they need, do what it takes. I think the way you treat candidates through the process of being really clear. I really believe that the more open and transparent you are about your process and what you're looking for up front, the better chance you have of finding the people that you need. Like, people just appreciate honesty, So there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, Jan, I've got 3 steps in our process. I'm thrilled that you're in the first one. This discussion is going to be focused on these things. Our next one is going to be focused on that. You'll get a chance to meet this person. And then our final interview will be focused on these things, and you'll get to meet our head of design and our head of product, and you'll get to ask them a whole bunch of questions as well. But by the end of that interview process, you should have a whole bunch of information about us that should make you feel really confident that we're potentially a right fit for you, or maybe that we're not, and vice versa. How does that sound to you? That's just a great, I'm ad hocing, but that's just a great way to frame it. People appreciate clarity.
Yeah. And I guess, yes, you already mentioned that people can get like, the hiring guide from your website. We can share these slides as well. So if someone want to,
and this is exactly the sort of thing that we do for clients. I've done these with big San Fran tech companies and startups as well. Just have this as a template. You use it for each role. They're great to come back to as well. Just make a copy for the next role, but keep these because if you get to the point where you're running retros on your own hiring, which I strongly advise you do, then being able to go back to these and hey, was this hiring plan right for that role? Like we thought it was at the time, but actually maybe it needs tweaking. If you have an engineer role that you have a hiring guide for, and then you're hiring a senior engineer, make a copy of this and then just start tweaking it for your senior role. Like, they're great places to start. You do it once and you get into the cadence, if you like, the routine, the discipline of doing it. Hiring just over time gets easier, which I think is what we all want.
Yeah. And I guess, if you have this sort of structure, the common practice is also see like if you get a lot of candidates dropping off on particular stage of interview as well, so that you can always go back and think about, do we really need those 5 rounds?
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is no to 5 rounds.
And so okay, let's unwrap this challenge. We want to run only 2 interviews, but we want to really make sure we ask the right questions and focus on what we're trying to find out. So what's I guess you have like few things about the actual interview flow and what we need to do.
Yeah, so 4 parts to the way we look at it is 4 parts to an interview. So priming, so this is the intro. This is hey Jana, thanks for turning up. Like, we're thrilled to meet you. Really pleased that you want to be a part of this process. What we're going to do today is XYZ. We're going to have an initial conversation about the role. Feel free to jump in with any questions that you've got. But we're going to talk about the business a little bit, talk about the products that we build, give you some context around that, talk a little bit about your current situation and figure out together if this is a conversation worth pursuing. And that's it. Like, that could be the way you prime or open. It saves any of that awkwardness when you first land on a video conference or in an interview room. And then opening, kick off with an open-ended question that gives a descriptive response. So it might be, what was it specifically about our job ad that you particularly liked? And what made you apply? If someone's able to go deep into, what, I really like this thing. I've worked at a company that built something similar, and I really like building this thing. I like working with lots of data, and this product is effectively a data lake that's displayed to a customer. That's like you're part of the way there. Like, you're having a conversation and you're getting into the nuts and bolts. So that's one question you can ask. Another one is you've read the job ad, just in your own words. Just describe what you think the role is all about for me, and then we can work on that. So just being, there's different ways you can open the conversation, but just being really clear, as John's saying, being clear is the purpose of the interviews. So,
I think James have like actually comment around that. Even if you're clear as to the purpose of multiple interviews, there is a lot of repetitive and necessary as it has to bearing on the actual day-to-day role.
Yeah. So James, I would say, So I think
completing 3 hours behavioral quiz and the client-facing one.
Yeah. So again, I think this comes back to who's owning the interview process. If you've got an internal people team and they're saying this is the process you have to go down, then that's a conversation to be having. But your interview should not be repetitive. You shouldn't. Interview 1 and interview 2 should not be the same. If they are, then you need to rethink how you're actually having interviews, and happy to help out with that. But so I think that's my key thing is they shouldn't be repetitive. There's no point. You're not gathering any new info.
I think this is kind of a tricky part, because this person talking with the candidate, another person talking with the candidates, and they kind of want to not just have the information that's been passed to them, they want to ask this question themselves. Yeah. So it could be the same question, like, why are you passionate about this role? But then how we can make sure that we're not asking the same questions.
Yeah. So again, this comes to the
process.
This comes back to the hiring guide. Everyone being really, really clear about what their part, what information are they contributing to this pool of knowledge that you're trying to gather. So this is where spending time as a hiring team up front and everyone being really clear is important. There's no need to ask, why are you passionate about this role? And just an FYI, one of my biggest pet peeves is why you're passionate about that role, because it's such an easy way out. Some people aren't passionate about your business. They just want a job with nice people doing stuff that's interesting. They don't need to be passionate about helping you sell more widgets. Like, seriously, they're probably not. They're probably really passionate about working on some interesting tech with nice people who treat them well in a flexible environment. And that's good enough for some people. So rant aside, like chasing this thing of passion is interesting. Yes, James, collaboration and handovers, absolutely.
Okay, so I guess we already touched on it briefly. There is different types of question we can ask. Depends, what sort of what we're interviewing for and what sort of goals are. So, what do you basically suggest that once we decide to hire the person, and once we decide with the position description and what we're looking for, would you recommend that everyone who's like hiring managers kind of split what sort of questions they're asking, or everyone will ask some sort of questions from different categories? Like what do you think? How?
Yeah, so I do. So if, again, we're talking cross-functional teams, if the hiring manager is your CTO or your head of engineering, and you've got another senior engineer in there, and you're digging into some of how this person writes code, or how they push to production, or how they unit test, whatever it is, then if your second interview is a head of product and a head of design, they might want to understand how this person's worked with cross-functional teams before, how they interact with designers, how they interact with product managers, what kind of sprints they've worked in the past, what kind of tickets they normally build. Have they been involved in any client-facing stuff, like in terms of user stories? Have they written user stories? Have they contributed to that? So again, this comes back to this planning thing, right? So I think everyone should know before they go into an interview what it is that they're asking for. Don't just wing it. And then these types of questions. So how did you hear about the role? Why did you apply for this position? Probably important. So I think everyone's probably aware of these behavioral type questions. You've been given a task that you weren't familiar with. How did you approach it? So basically, you're looking for somebody who's can solve problems. So behavioral questions, I think we're aware of. Situational questions are good. So understanding how people would respond to work-related scenarios. We're looking to implement X product next year. How would you tackle the planning implementation? It might be, we're looking to really go deep on SRE next year. This role has potential to be involved in that. How would you think about setting up an SRE function for us? Like, what are the steps you go through? There are plenty of ways to ask these questions, but I think there's this opening. So open the question and then probe deeper. So if it was, how would you go about setting up an SRE function for us? They might say you want to probably do these 5 things. You might dig into one of those. Why would you do that? What else could you do? Have you done that before? How did that work out for you? So opening and then probing. So opening up and then going deep on questions, because that should be the flow of conversation. That's the fun part. That's the fun part of interviewing. This is where you're looking for the signal, right?
And look, so obviously, with different types of questions, but coming back to, our topic about the values, integrating the values, how we can actually, what sort of questions we can ask to find out those values and to understand if it's, the person actually gonna fit with other teams and be in line with the company values.
Yeah. So first of all, you got to know what your values are as a business. So what are they? And then you should be understanding as well, what are the behaviors that demonstrate that. So if one of your values is team focused, like we're team first, like, so you're then looking for signal that talks about teamwork. So does this person tell stories of when you're asking about achievements, does this person go, I did this, I did this, I did this? Or does that person say, we as a team did this and I helped the team do that, and then we achieved this goal? Do they talk about we, or do they talk about I, particularly if they're a leader? If your leader's talking about I achieved this amount of sales, one thing, but then if he's talking about my team achieved this and we achieved that, then this is more team focused. So understanding what your values are and what the behaviors that align to those values are, again, super important. And I'm going to hazard a guess that people listening to this are going, this sounds like a lot of planning up front that you've got to do. Like, who's got time for that? I'd say to hiring managers, it's your role. You kind of have to make the time. This is your team. This is part of your job as a leader, is to part of your value as a leader is based on the quality of people you can attract and hire and retain. So you're better off spending the time up front on the planning of this than winging it and then having to hire the role again 3 months later. Your team getting cranky because now they're having to cover for that person. Your team potentially questioning your judgment of the people that you hire. They just leave after 3 months. So the best time to plan for all this is up front, not 3 months, 6 months after someone leaves. So again, we're looking for skills, competencies, and values. So understanding what your values are, understanding what the behaviors are, your values are, beliefs, philosophies, and principles that drive the company. And these are things that determine how you all work together and make decisions. So, there's some examples there. Being humble, embracing change, putting others first, thinking deeply. This is actually an old client of ours. So, thinking deeply about a problem. You could ask questions, around how someone got to a decision when they had a tight deadline. How did they do that? If they went, I went with the first thing that came to mind, and that seemed all right. Is that thinking deeply, or is that kind of winging it? One-off might be a winging it, but you might see other signals throughout the interview process that collectively go, actually, this guy he can think deeply about solving some of our customers' most critical problems.
And how you go about, balancing it as well? Obviously, we're looking for skills, competency, values. A lot of interviews tend to focus on the skills because, we need someone to quickly build it. Let's just hire the person to do skills. So how we can find this balance on the skill match, but also the value match? And, what if someone just really lacking those skills, how we prioritize it?
So there's skills that are critical to the role that if they don't have the skills or competencies to do the role, then there's just no point hiring them. Like there isn't. So the skill is, if we're going to use an engineering perspective, it's coding, it's the quality of code you produce, it's your unit test, it's all that stuff. The competency might be, working with, cross-functional team with product managers. It might be something that's more client-facing. It might be interfacing directly with users to understand how they use a product day to day. Not every engineer is going to want to do that. That's a competency. And then the values are, this belief, this way they work, the behaviors that they demonstrate on a day-to-day basis. So again, if teamwork is one of them, are they someone who, when they're talking to a customer, they bring that information back and they get the team together and they do a deep dive on what they learn? Or are they somebody who just goes off and builds something and hopes it's right?
Would you, I'm just looking, with some examples of the questions in terms of the skills and competency. Would you just ask the person just the straight questions? What are your values? What is your top values?
Yeah, you could do. Yeah.
Do you find this question successful, or is it too broad?
You could frame it differently. You could say, what do you value in teamwork? What do you value in a relationship? In a working environment? What things are important to you in day-to-day working life? Yeah. But you can just come out and talk to them. Hey, one of our values that we're really tight on is teamwork. Talk to them about the teams you've worked in the past. Give me some examples of X, Y, Z. If you had a team member, you give them a situational question. If you had a team member who was really struggling with something, and you were already deep in stuff and you didn't have time to support them, but you knew it was important that you hit your deadline, what would you do in that sort of situation? Yeah.
And with those value questions, do you feel like you would ask similar questions for each role? So no matter if you're hiring engineer or you're hiring, I don't know, the BA or UX or manager, would you ask similar questions? The
values don't change, right? The values are common across the business. The skills and the competencies change from job family to job family and role to role, same as the competencies. So the values should be running right across the business.
We talk about it, last week with Prash about the employer branding bit and, having, consistent employer brand and values, which is, sometimes it could be quite hard to have the whole set of the same set of values for different departments, and different teams. Would you still believe that the values need to be the same for whole organization, or
why would they be different?
don't know, different location maybe, you know, this office have like, you know, other values, so this office, you know, this location
Right.
could be slightly different, or technical engineering team is more aligned with this, but like, I don't know, marketing team more aligned with this. How do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think an overarching philosophy of, you know, how you treat each other at work day to day. Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to start. In so different locations, I think different countries is a good example. I think you'd have, you know, different dimensions of what the values are. They might mean different things to different people, but I think you need to start somewhere. You know, all good teams are aligned in one way or another. You know, the whole San Fran, you know, tech startup, you know, we're aligned because we want to, you know, change the world. You know, one bit of data at a time. Whatever their thing is, selling widgets. And you know, a lot of startup founders try and rally people around this mission. You know, that's admirable. But I think the values are things that sit across the business.
Yeah. And okay, so I'm just coming, I guess, going a step back to this interview process and, like, you know, making sure that everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
So what do you think, like, we just discussed that we're trying to make sure that every hiring manager asks different questions, and, you know, we prepare in advance what sort of questions each person will ask.
Yeah.
But when we, you know, have a few stages of interviews, do you think those people who already interview the person should pass some information to the next stage? Yeah. Or like they would discuss it at the end? Like, what do you think in terms of this structure? What's you feel like the most successful?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, right?
Because I know sometimes people wanna, you know, to avoid this kind of, like, you know, bias or avoid the previous feedback, don't give any information to the next interviewers, so they don't get any, you know, predisposition. So how?
So that what you're referring to, that's called the hippo effect, the highest paid person's opinion. So, you know, you get that thing of you're interviewing Jana this afternoon and you go to the corporate kitchen or you're on Slack and you see Jim, who you know interviewed Jana this morning, go, I didn't think much of Jana. You know, I wasn't that impressed. I didn't think that she was very good at IT consulting, and she's clearly not that smart, and I couldn't see our clients liking her. This is a different Jana, by the way. And so then that can then inform or influence the decisions that people go into the next interview with. So I think keeping your opinions, you know, to yourself, yes, I agree on. I do think that I think the people in the second interview need to know that if that person hadn't passed the first interview, they wouldn't be getting to the second one. So again, this hiring process, if you're getting hard no signals in the first interview, like it's just a no, and you're confident and you're making the decision that you know the people in the second interview would be feeling the same, then that person doesn't make the second interview. So if the person's got a second interview and you're a second interview, then you've got to be confident. You've got to have confidence that person's progressed for a reason. If you're in the first interview and, you know, 90% of what you gained from the discussion was really positive, but there's 10%. Hey, can I'd be having a conversation. Hey, John, can you ask Jan about these things? We didn't really get time to dig into this. So can you work this into your interview for me? We particularly wanted to deep dive on this subject, but we just didn't get to it, or the conversation sort of flowed on and we just didn't get there. So, so I think that sort of conversation is fine. But again, if you've planned this out properly, you shouldn't be repeating questions, or it shouldn't be the same conversation in the second interview to the first one, because everybody already knows what they're going to be talking about.
Yeah. And so the idea is that they already think if they went through this interview, they answer reasonably to those questions. Yeah. So you feel like the best, like the most of the interviews, they progressive. It's not like, two people interview and then other two people interview and then they come after and decide. So it's more like a progressive. So you pass this stage and then you go to the next stage. So do you think that structure is better?
Yeah. And then you get to, so everyone's interviewed, hiring team comes back together, This is where you share notes. This is where you debrief on the interviews. The way I've run it with probably hundreds of interviews over the years. We do a thing called the Fist of Five, where you go 1, 2, 3, and you show between 1 and 5 fingers. 1 is a hard no, 1's a no, 3 is a maybe, 2 is a yes, and 5 is a hard yes. You go 1, 2, 3, and you all show your fingers. You record that. If all of you are a hard yes, that's a hire. If all of you are a hard no, that's not a hire. If you're all in the middle, then it's probably time for a bit of a debate. If you're all a yes, then you all agreed. You might have some yes, some no, and that's when you work through it. Why were you a no? Talk me through the pros. We really like this. Talk me through the cons. Weren't too keen on this. Didn't really understand that. And then this is where you get the debate and the stuff. The really good stuff coming out. This is where collaborative decision making happens, where everyone's really comfortable with the decision that you're making. So you don't have the situation where Dave Smith turns up on Monday and half the team thought he wasn't useless at the interview, but he got the job anyway, and half of them thought he was great. That just doesn't work for anyone. I don't know why I said Dave Smith. I hope there's no Dave Smiths here.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And it was a great slide. Actually, I lost this slide. I'll find it. 1 second. It should be here.
Fine.
The actual process, how we're embedding values into interview. Yeah. I think you already touched on to it, but let's just, I guess, structure it again.
Yeah. So again, deep diving into this is, defining what each value is in your business. Again, values, they transcend the role and the level. The values, sit across the business. What are the behaviors or the traits that tie into each value? If you have a people and culture team, they should have this done, or they should work on it with you. And then you're working on specific questions that will show if the candidate has those behaviors or not. And then you're looking through those value signals through the interview process. And then you're assessing for value alignment from all that information. So, it's interviewing is hard work. I think that the reason a lot of people, hate it is because it's hard work. And you know what? It's one of those things where nobody wants to be there. No, I don't really know many people who love interviewing, whether they're the interviewer or the interviewee. But until we've got a better way of gathering information about people and sometimes having to sell them the role, because people who are good are probably interviewing with 3 or 4 other companies as well. Even in a market like this, good people are going to be getting interviews. So, a big part of the interview process is you selling the role as well.
Yeah. And I think you also have the interview guide example there that people can see on your website as well. Yeah.
So again, I can share templates of this just in Word. People can take these away and tailor them to their own needs. So again, this is a bit of a layout. So I think the thing I'd encourage is not just to sit there and read these like a robot. So so with competency 1, with the leadership skills, you might say at the beginning, say, hey, there's 3 things we really want to talk about in this interview. 1 is your approach to leadership. 2 is how you've scaled teams in the past. And 3 is how you've communicated a vision to your team. Is that all right with you? Yes, it is. Cool. Let's jump into the first one. How do you, when you're leading a team, how do you define and communicate performance expectations? How do your team know what's expected of them? And then start talking about it. And then you can probe into it. That's great. How do you go about providing recognition in your team? If this was for a sales manager, you might say, if you're looking for some humility or the ability to understand people, which good leaders should be doing, I'd probably be answering that question. Hey, some people love public recognition. They would like seeing their name on Slack or top of a leaderboard. Other people like a hand around the shoulder and saying, well done. And they don't want their name in lights. So it's about understanding your team and what works best for them. But then also promoting as a team what we've achieved. So again, that might tie into the teamwork value that you're looking for. So, the way you frame questions is really important. If you just sat there and said, how do you define and communicate expectations in your team? If you're asking these things robotically, it's going to just be awkward for everybody. But again, to my point right at the beginning, if you want to get better at interviewing, just do more of it. Get really comfortable just asking the questions. Prime and open, good ones for them. If you remember nothing else, prime and open. Hey, let's move on to scaling teams. What's the most challenging issue about scaling teams that you've encountered in the past? It's a really good question. Someone says, "Oh, I haven't really scaled a team before. I've inherited a team myself, and I just manage those." That's an interesting discussion point. How would you scale a team?
Yep.
You say you inherit a team of 5 here, but your sales targets mean you need to hire another 5 people. How do you approach that?
And look, obviously, like you've done it so many times, and those sort of questions come like naturally. You probably have like a list of 200 questions just in your mind that you can like pull out any time. But like
I have a big spreadsheet.
For someone who starting, where would you recommend to find those questions? Do they just Google it? Like
you can do ask other so there's a couple of things there. If you just started out interviewing, you should be asking other people in your team who you've interviewed, who else has interviewed, can they help you? If you're new to interviewing and this is your role that you're hiring for, you should be going to your people and culture team and asking them for help. I've not really hired anyone before, and this is my role. Like, this is all new to me. Can you help me? If you're a senior engineer, like ask your dev manager or your engineering manager. They should be helping you on this sort of stuff. There's no business where you should be left hiring by yourself, having never done it before. So ask help. If you need a big list of interview questions, I think we have a big list of interview questions somewhere we can share. Like, seriously, take it.
Right.
But again, this is also then coming back right to the beginning. When you know what you're looking for and you can clearly define what it is that you're looking for in this role, what are the skills we need? What are the competencies we need? So if one of the competencies is this engineer is going to be client facing and working with directly with users to understand how they use it, that's a skill. So that's a competency. So what skills inform that? Well, they've got to be good communicators. They've got to be comfortable doing that. So if they're slightly more introverted and the thought of talking to a customer or a user absolutely freaks them out, then we probably need to know that early on. So again, taking your time to understand what's required in the role and thinking it through rather than just winging it.
Yep.
Super important. And you know what? If you're really struggling with questions, something like ChatGPT is a good place to go. You spin yourself up some questions to ask it. What are some good questions to ask a senior engineer who's going to be client facing? See what it gives you. They might not be perfect, but they're probably a good starting place if you're having a bit of a mental block.
And ChatGPT great on rephrasing questions as well. I think sometimes it's really good, like, you want to ask something, but it just sounds bumpy when you're like trying to verbalize it. I find it really useful when I'm trying, to put some question together, but it just doesn't feel like it flows. The ChatGPT is great for those that when you already gave him all the points and then just make it more sounds better.
I think the most important part of interviewing, is you got to be yourself. Like, you've got to be you. I think there's this whole sort of mystique. Like, I've lost count of the amount of times I've seen it when I've gone into an interview with a hiring manager and it's like they're a different person. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you talking like that? That's not even how you talk. It's the same thing with job ads. The language sometimes in job advertisements isn't the way we talk. Due to exponential growth, we are seeking the services of, like, no one talks like that. Like, just talk normally. Hey, we're growing our team. We're hoping that you want to be part of it. That's real language that people relate to. This is why we get so many vanilla applications, because the language and the way we promote our jobs often is so vanilla as well. Like, you put vanilla in, you're going to get vanilla out. I don't know if that's an actual saying. It is now. Made it up.
Yeah. And exactly, that's another challenge to showing that values in the job ads as well. Because you can have a great values, but your job ad could be just exactly what you said.
Your job ads are a great place to talk about
formal, the formal one that's been written 10 years ago.
Yeah. If one of your values is having fun and you're relaxed, don't know if that's a value, but you know what I mean. And your job ad sounds like it's been written in the 1890s London, right? Due to exponential, there's no congruence there. There's no alignment. Like, how's that even a thing? So talk, use language that is reflective of how you talk in real life. And when you go into interviews, just talk, just be yourself, be normal. Particularly if it's your role that you're hiring. This person's going to be reporting directly to you. Just be yourself. You can stay focused on having the conversation and what you're trying to get out of it, but be nice, be kind, give people the ability to answer your questions, give them the ability to ask their own. If you can see people are struggling, don't make it harder for them. Don't sit in silence until they answer. Ask them, do you want me to reframe that? Let me think of a different way to ask that question. It might seem a bit clunky. How about this? Or, hey, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. It's a definitely two-way street. And Simon, I'm just cautious about the time. We're already 50 minutes of, in our live stream. I think maybe, one more question I want to ask you. Obviously, we talk a lot about, what the hiring managers should do and interviews should do. But I definitely know that a lot of people who are watching these channels are job seekers. So just maybe, the last one that I want to ask you, based on all this information we've given on what hiring managers should do, what would be your top advice to the candidates when they actually want to show their values and when they want to show that they want to, their values in line with the company values?
Yeah. So I think firstly, before that, only apply to roles that you have the skills and the competencies for. Like, seriously. I think, research, spend some time on a company's website, reread the job ad, make sure you understand it properly. In the same way that we expect hiring managers to be prepared before they go into an interview, it's on the candidate to be prepared as well. Like, this is your career, this is your life. Like, you need to own it. There's responsibility on both sides, right? So, again, I think Melbourne's a small market as well. And I think there's no time for going to interviews unprepared. Like, people pretty much everyone knows everyone. So, how do you want to represent yourself in an interview? How do you want people to perceive you? You turn up, a bit late. I've had people turning up for interviews vaping before. I'm like, dude, seriously, what are you doing? Doesn't bother me. I'm not a smoker, but why would you do that to yourself? I think, research the company. If it's a role you're really interested in, read the PD, jump on the website, spend some time researching them. Book that time out in your calendar so you actually do it. So you're not turning up at the job ad and turning up to the job interview and going, which role was this for again? I can't remember. Like, there's nothing going to turn the hiring manager off more. And the same goes the other way. If you're a hiring manager and you're turning up for an interview, don't sit there reading the candidate's CV in front of them. Like, you should have done that beforehand. So.
Yep, definitely. So I just want to share your details as well. So obviously, if anyone wants those, guides that we mentioned with the questions, the hiring guide and the interview guide, so they can all see it on your website. And what's the best ways to connect with you in general?
That's my email address there. I'm probably the easiest person to find online as well. So I'm on LinkedIn. Ping me directly. I'm on quite a few engineering, product and design Slack channels as well. So if you want to search me on some of those, I'm on Dev ANZ, I'm on Product Coalition, I'm on UXDC, I'm on pretty much most of them. I'm super easy to find.
Perfect. And while I'm gonna do the announcement for next week, we have the few people who join us live. So as usual, so you can pick someone that will be a winner for today's live stream and can actually take you for a virtual coffee chat and ask more questions about what's going on. So while you're looking there, I'm just find what's happening next week. So next week, 22nd of February. So next week we have, I'll have two people on the live stream, Selena and Michael, and we're going to talk about pair programming. So hence it's two of them. So because they're going to give us a bit of live demonstration as well. So, and talk about how pair programming actually can help you grow as a developer and develop your career in software engineering. So make sure to tune in if you're in software engineering space. So you'll definitely get a lot of valuable insights into pair programming, especially now that a few companies do pair programming as they're in the interview process as well. So, something to consider when you're going to the interviews. Yeah.
I've spoken to Michael quite a few times in the past and know him. He's a good human, so he'll be good to listen to.
Definitely. And so this who are you having virtual coffee chat with?
Well, I think James has been the one with all the chit chat. It looks like he doesn't mind the chat. I think he and I should do a 3-hour behavioural quiz together over a coffee. But if he's open to it and just wants to have a chat and a catch up and talk about interviewing and hiring or anything else, that'd be a cool thing.
Perfect, James. Obviously, I'll connect you. I'll connect you with Simon so you can ask all the questions you have offline as well. Cool. I'm impressed that we're on time with you, Simon. So
don't sound surprised.
I'm actually impressed. I think also because it's a really hot evening in Melbourne, I have a funny feeling that a lot of people is on the beach today.
I think so. They're making the most of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do the same. As soon as we finish this live stream, I'm gonna pop into the St Kilda beach and go for a nice sunset walk. So, nice. And Simon, thank you so much for all your insights today. And just at the end, to finish this live stream, it was already a few spontaneous quotes there while we were talking. But do you have your favorite sort of inspirational quote or something you live by that you can share?
A favorite inspirational quote? Probably for me, discipline is freedom. Yeah, I like being disciplined about certain things. You and I were talking about training earlier. I do mine in the morning. You're an evening person, but I think being able to have discipline about the things that are important to you, the things that you need to do, that's freedom.
Yep. I think there is an extended quote. I don't remember now, but it's like, seek freedom and be prisoner of your desires, seek discipline and find your liberty. Something in this line. Yeah.
I'm going to go with vanilla in, vanilla out there.
yeah, vanilla in. I was waiting for that
one. I'm stealing that one for myself. How can I do that? I don't know.
No, I think this is definitely the summary. How to incorporate values into your tech recruitment process. Vanilla in, vanilla out.
That's what happens, mate.
Exactly. So if you're listening and you still, putting vanilla out, think about it.
Yeah. That's my first LinkedIn post tomorrow. Vanilla in, vanilla out.
I can't wait. Thank you, Simon. Again, thank you so much, everyone who joined us tonight. So basically, if you enjoy the conversation, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the like button as usual if you get some information. And obviously, share this video with the hiring managers because they need to hear this. And obviously, I think it's also, I keep talking again. But, we were talking about the employer brand, and I think we didn't mention it because a lot of candidates having a bad experience during the process, and they feel like, they're going through like 3 rounds of interview and everyone asking irrelevant questions or same questions. Same thing you said about the Melbourne is a small place. You had a bad experience as a candidate, you will pass it on this experience to other people. So it's a two-way street. So
and they don't say I had a bad interview with James Castos. They say I had a bad interview with whatever the company name is. So it's actually the company. It's actually the company that wears it. So.
Yeah. So that's basically another way to think about it. Another think about like how much time you want to actually invest in thinking through your hiring process and interview process.
Yeah, and it was easy. We'd all be able to do it.
Anyway, thank you, Simon. 59 minutes. I'll thank everyone. I'll see everyone next Wednesday.
See ya.
See you.